Hello and welcome back, everybody, to Zero Issue Podcast. It's going to be a Sir Waltham and Dryad at it once again, but this time it's not us. We're not alone. We have a little bit of a special guest there. If you couldn't already tell, it's going to be none other than Hunts. Hunts, say hello. Tell the folks about yourself.
Hi everyone. My name is Hans. I'm an 18-year-old manager who's just now returning to the scene after a lovely semester at college. I've been on previous teams like Phase Two, Triumph, and most notably recently Sky Foxes and Last Hope.
Fantastic. I guess before we get into it too much here, Hunts, um, I want to kind of set the precedent because at least me, before I really got into the auxiliary roles of casting and all that kind of stuff, I didn't know what the difference was, like a general manager, a team manager, a coach. How do you define what you do as a manager?
So what a manager does is that they basically, from what I've done in the past, is
Hmm.
just book scrims, talk to other teams, hopefully organizations later on. And you're like the person, like the representative of the team. And what this means, you're the face of the team. Your actions can reflect on things that happen and things like that. You're just basically just the face of the team and the person who just mainly runs the team.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. I'm hoping we can get some good insight here because, as I've said, I think just now and many times before, me and Dryad just have the the viewpoint of the casting perspective of things. Definitely like getting those perspectives outside of that realm. Myself personally.
Yeah, and also because I remember even before I started casting, when I started following a bunch of like tier 3 people. I remember following you, and I've been following you on Twitter for a while, and I've seen that you've gone through a bunch of different teams. You've done a lot of stuff for managing. So I mean, tell us a little bit about how you started managing, how you decided you wanted to be a manager, because I feel like that story is always interesting for everyone.
Oh man. So this goes all the way back to like when I first really wanted to get started in esports back in like 2017, like early 2017. I was a big fan of the Fusion, and they had like, oh man, what was it? It was like this hometown heroes. That's what it was. And it was like this tournament where like try out for Fusion Uni, whatever. Me as a diamond fucking footy player. I entered it. I didn't make it, of course. I didn't make it past the first round. But I got to meet so many new people, or so many new and great people who I know to this day. I probably call them my friends. Um, I met people like the Simone names, like Primo Doce. I met Swimmer. Who else did I meet? Knox. He was the flex player for Karasuno at the time. And I met Lefa, who was the previous hit scan for Bye Week, and Insomniac as well, who was also there. I didn't get to meet him though. Um, and then from there, I started, I started to make a team with my friend Puns and Buns, which is called the Philadelphia Confusion. I will never forget that name. Um, and then later on that year, I transitioned to tier three management because my friend Puns and Buns, his friend T Bubbles, um, she was like, "Yeah, I need a VOD recorder." I was like, "Sure, I'll come on in." And that was like kind of like my first step. I was a student. Um, you know, didn't have much to do, and I was like, "Okay, well, this kills boredom. I really like to learn and watch the game." And yeah, and so I joined my first team called Clarity. They went through manager troubles, by securing one end. I then stepped in, and then later on, uh, after I left Clarity, Mushu left with them. I made my next team. That team is called Bounce Back. It was a team. I made it with a friend, my good friend K2. Him and a close friends was like, hey, let's join together. Um, and shortly after that, I had Triumph. I was there for almost a year. That was a really sad departure for me because I grew so close with all the staff members and everything. After that, it was like very difficult to me to like find a new home because when you're with a team for so long, you kind of grow like this emotional connection. And I kind of just took a step back and reevaluated what I wanted to do because I was in my senior year of high school. I had to make a big choice of college. And late April, my data analyst friend named Miata was like, "Hey, me and this guy named Autumn Souls, we're gonna make a team. We need a manager." And I was like, "Sure." I got nothing better to do, and uh, from there, we uh, roster was faded, frosted, uh, Aether, also known as Light now. Uh, crap, who's the fuck CBS? Oh, Atlas from EU, Fallen, and Autumn Souls. Great group of guys. We then merged with Skyfoxes and Trials, and since Skyfox was bombed out, we half the roster stayed together and we made BCFC, and then BCFC didn't make it through trials and they disbanded afterwards. So yeah, that's like the long term of my history.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a little bit of my background.
Well, I mean, definitely a lot of changes, I guess, going through. I want to say the years, but in esports, sometimes, especially with a lot of these very temporary teams, it's going through the months where you only have a couple of months together as a group, and then it's just the disband coming through. But one part that kind of stuck out to me while you were describing your experiences and you coming through, um, what you did was something that I think me and Dryad have kind of talked about in some of our earlier episodes, where it's like, there's this it seems like, just from your story, that there's a huge web of people who, they're not big names, but they're people who can just like get you involved in the esports community. Even for somebody at a college level, which a lot of times, um, we had this entire discussion about esports going into college and collegiate sports, and how sometimes it's not as
Yeah.
profitable, and it's just interesting to hear you kind of talk about the networks that you've built in
Mhm.
those collegiate situations or college situations.
Wait, was that a question?
No, no, no. I'm just saying,
Oh,
like, it's just fascinating to me
yeah.
to hear that in like how all those threads of
Not
the
a
web kind of
test.
connect. Yeah, no, we're not.
Don't
We're
worry.
not here to
Don't
grill
worry.
you or anything.
He's
It's
like,
not
no,
being.
wait, I don't know the answer for this one.
No, the we you can put away your number twos. We're just hanging out right now. But I guess that's a good time as any to kind of go into our real um first talking point here. And you talked about how managers are often seen as the face of the company. One of the talking points that I have written down here is Shattered Dreams Esports are going to be acquired rather by YDX, which, as I understand it, is kind of a tech industry. If I'm of the right understanding, what I guess what are your thoughts on that in terms of esports teams being absorbed by non esports businesses, enterprises?
Um, it's very interesting to me because when you first look at like an amateur team, you basically see like, okay, these are the not the worst of the worst, but like they're getting there. Um, as long as like the investors or AK in this case YDX, if they're coming in here, with some prior knowledge that they understand the scene and they understand gaming, yada yada yada. That's good on them because it allows them to look into amateur teams and they're able to like pick out potential. And I think with this, I can't say this right. With YDX investing into SXD, that's hard to say.
Yeah, it's a little
Um, um, it's a great move on them because if they made the right move, because I'm not familiar with
Mhm.
SXD with this company, uh, but if time will only tell if they made the right move or not. This is mostly because you know the team has to perform uh tournaments and things like that, and if they perform well and they get their money back, they made the good investment, and and if the team does well, the money keeps coming through for the SXD esports company.
Right.
um
Um,
good.
Yeah. So one thing about that, and one of the sort of like talking points about having, like millionaire companies taking care of esports. The problem here is that maybe they don't seem as connected as you wanted to maybe the fan base, to maybe the actual team, because at the end of the day what they're trying to do is an investment, right? And it works for them because they get their money back, and that's cool. But on the other hand, you want to see a little bit more of support coming through, a lot of more the fan base. And this has been a discussion for even like a few Overwatch League teams, right? That they're owned by companies. And is that really good? Yeah, they're great. They have good pickups because they have enough money, but that doesn't mean that you're gonna have enough support and that energy that maybe other teams give, because you can tell that they have a lot of passion. And when this is going to tier 2, yeah, maybe for example it can help a lot with teams getting more support that they haven't gotten recently. But on the other hand, you also want people to be excited. So how do you make that connection between companies, yeah, having a lot of money, but also making sure that the people that they're hiring and the people they're managing, the community, are people who are passionate?
Oh boy, that's a mouthful. So are you talking about like the connection between like the big companies, aka in this case YDX and SXD? Are you talking about the how like they come together, or are you just talking about like how that could have happened?
Either, I mean, what do you think about, so for example, having companies mostly only do esports because of the money rather than really being
Hmm.
passionate about it?
Yeah,
So that's
I mean, eh, in my opinion, it's very. I mean, at least coming from organizational standpoint, it's very difficult, to invest in, just in teams in general, because you have to remember when you're a company going in there, you want to break even. That is
right.
your angle. But, the difficulty of that is high, but and what I mean by that, but the difficulty of that is high, it's gonna be hard to get return. Like if you're in a franchise league like Overwatch League um uh or like CDL, you know, you're gonna find a way to break even no matter what. But it's gonna take time unless you don't do things well, obviously. But in terms of the connection between, the esports teams, or in this case, the organization and YDX, it might have, I am not familiar with the situation, but it might have been something with, with the esports organization reaching out to the company asking for an investment. I don't know, but it could have been along the lines of something like that. And I think a connection like that is very important. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, that's my overall general thought of the situation. But it's very interesting how like a
Yeah.
small organization team was able to get picked up.
Yeah, and I think to kind of piggyback off the point Drad was making, um, it's interesting to me, and it's hopefully uh, something we don't see develop in the wrong way, where a lot of these companies just kind of look at esports as a cash cow. Obviously, that's what companies are
Yeah.
going to do, but I mean, personally, from a person who's invested in the development of players and the development of teams, I would like to see that come to the forefront more so than it
Hmm.
just being a for-profit industry.
Right.
Yeah, and especially so when I think about maybe orgs that I would want to, for example, take care of uh the Overwatch teams, I don't think of corporations or businesses that almost have nothing to do with esports. I
Mhm.
would think of teams that, or orgs that we saw right at the beginning when Overwatch was just becoming an esport. I think about FaceCan. You think about Optic Gaming. All these companies that know about esports and they are also very successful, right? And not only you bring the passion of already the fans of the organization. So, for example, if I'm gonna say I'm a Face Clan fan, then I can say that I'm gonna support whatever face team is owned in Overwatch League, whatever team Face Clan owns, and that is gonna bring more people into any level of Overwatch, right? So that's the way that I see it, and that's why I think it's so important to have that connection happen between the community of esports, because it doesn't work like any other community. It doesn't work like a normal sports company. It doesn't work like anything else. Esports is its own unique sort of bubble in the middle of everything that we're dealing with, and you have to connect fans, and it's not only going to benefit your team, your fans, it's going to benefit everything overall because people are going to really feel the passion that you have towards your game.
I certainly agree. Um, as we, I guess, kind of, take a look at that, the grand, like, I guess, industry involvement or external industry involvement that you could have within esports teams. I kind of want to take that and kind of pause it here because right now, Dryad, you're using very OWL examples. And I think they're very valid, they're very cogent, but to kind of turn that towards tier 2 and tier 3, and just I guess the state of it in general, right? I know that the example we gave of YDX and SXD, you're absolutely right, Hunts. It is a little difficult to say.
That's why I'm not saying it.
Yeah, it's perfectly fair. But it just kind of feels like and this is a theme that I don't think is controversial by most Overwatch viewers' opinions. It feels like top tier Overwatch gets way not overhyped, but it doesn't get hyped to perhaps a scalable degree that the lesser um, organizations do. In that it gets way more. Obviously, you see Cheez-It boxes and I think like Wheaties and talk shows with people from the high league OWLs. But now that we're seeing kind of organizations flow into tier 2 and maybe into that tier 3 role as well, do you see that as kind of changing things around Hunts, that perhaps mentality towards tier 2 and 3?
In terms of like, oh boy, like if you think about it, like just well, okay. I'm trying to trying to think of a respond to this because like when you think about it, when you have like an organization coming into Overwatch, right?
Mm-hmm.
They want to make money. If you educate yourself on what the status of Overwatch is,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like a tiny like not like Overwatch League big, but like
Yeah.
not like Comcast Spectacor or Cox Industry or Cox Enterprises, right?
Yeah.
Or like I'm talking about like Optic or like not
Right.
not Optic size, but like I'll use Triumph for example. Triumph was coming in, was an organization that was willing to put it like not everything into the path to pro, but at least like some things into the path to pro.
Mhm.
Like like they were like I don't know what I can say. I'm not under like any NDA or anything, but like I just don't want to say something I'm not supposed to say.
Sure.
But
Not trying to put you on the spot here or anything.
but they wanted to they wanted to like pave a path for players so that they can move up and eventually they could be on the main team or make these smaller tiny teams. And like in terms of that, like that's Triumph's goal, and like that's what they want to do. And if they're like able to make money off of that, that's good for them. But
Mhm.
you have to think about so let's say I make a big organization, like I don't know, like let's call it like Cox, like Cox Enterprises, like Cox Esports.
Mhm.
I'm a smaller company, but I but I don't have money, right? So I can't I can't pull anyone in, you know?
Mhm.
If that makes sense. Cause like, let's say like, you're just starting out and like, I want to make esports team, I want to have this, I want to have that. But you can't really do any of it without money. Cause like let's say you want a top tier Overwatch team, like American Tornado. Like let's say like Oregon wants to pick them up. That's gonna be extremely hard for them because one, those players are extremely talented. Two, you need to like, often basically academy level contracts, which,
Yeah.
allow them to go through the path, get to Overwatch to get parent or in a way.
Mhm.
But what smaller orgs don't realize is like, when you're approached by a manager or just, or just like when managers like come to an org with like something, and if they have like and they know they have like, some sort of monetary value to them, they want to, go with them. But it's gonna be very hard to give a solid number when your prize pool returns on in Overwatch contenders
Mm.
is very low and not guaranteed. Because
Yeah.
Yeah.
what do you think? Because like, let me explain. Because when you think about it, what you win 13K a month in contenders, something like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
That's nothing. Like I did the math on this. you would need it would take you at least a couple months of consistent first places for, let's say, you pay each player $250 a month, and that's like player, staff, and maybe the
Right.
manager. I don't know if you want to pay your manager, but that's gonna take a long time to get your money back. Because one, 13,000, that's without taxes, first off.
Ugh.
Secondly, if the org wants to take their
This is just
cut,
getting complicated. Okay.
Yeah. No, but keep going. Not trying to.
yeah, because like orgs they take their cut of whatever percentage they want to take. Let's say it's like 20%, or which is an outrageous number. But let's say, org gets 20, players and staff split the rest of it, right? You're still not gonna be able to make your money back for the
Right.
organization. That's why it's so difficult to invest in Overwatch.
Yeah.
Just in the amateur base, because there's no. It's just too hard. And
And
go ahead,
um
Dryad.
yeah, no, I mean I was gonna say that's exactly why we saw so many like academy teams that are no longer here, right? Like so many academies
Mhm.
that they were gonna pay the players and actually have them have some consistency, some stability, but that doesn't happen, right? And the issue here is just how are you gonna solve this problem, right? Because at the end of the day, tier two and the quote unquote path to pro is made to have a lot of so contenders players have a lot of potential to go into Overwatch League because it's the end goal. But the problem is, how do you solve that non-existent almost fluidity between contenders between tier two and Overwatch League, right? Because it doesn't matter at the end of the day, like you mentioned, the money is not going to be enough for an actual organization to take care of a tier two team, and it's not. I mean, if you're gonna be with an org, and if you're, for example, American Tornado, you'd rather just stay because it's a group of friends. They like each other. They have fun. They get their own money. They get to divide it however they want, rather than have to kind of have like a more organized quote unquote process of it going through the organization, and then the organization maybe taking part of it. So that's a problem, right? The only solution that seems like it's going to be viable is having the academy teams back. And Chengdu Hunters, for example, was like trying to do this. They're making their own academy team back. So it should be sort of like the only way that I see it, and I don't know if you guys agree with this, is sort of forcing Overwatch League teams to have an academy team so that teams have a better opportunity at succeeding in players also.
Yeah.
Hans, I'll let you respond to that. 'cause
Yeah,
there's-
there were a lot of rumors, back in the day. And I'll let you speak next. But I was just saying, this is the point. There was a lot of talk back in the day, like, oh yeah, there's gonna be like an academy league, or academy leagues are gonna be required. And honestly, when everyone heard that was a rumor, everyone rejoiced. Because one, it not only guarantees like some sort of monetary pay for
Mhm.
Yeah.
players, but it also allows more players to journey through the path to pro. Because like if you look at like this season entirely, right? Like more American players, at least in the Senate contenders, by the way, more American players have gone backwards into path to pro rather than forward,
Yeah.
which is actually
Yeah.
it's actually amazing. Anyways, you go, Walt. Sorry.
No, that was. I just really wanted to get kind of your read on this because again, me and Dryad have kind of pondered this kind of stuff before, but there's definitely that new point of view that I highly that I personally highly value. But yeah, it's just to me it's the question of a lot of people say support tier two, but we can watch it all we want. We can encourage the teams. We can root for players, but to me it seems like there's kind of a more um, I guess like fundamental issue there with it being unsustainable, at least for like orgs.
Mhm.
Certainly if you're a good enough player, you can probably help yourself out quite a bit throughout contenders. But even then, um, it kind of has the same problem that Overwatch does in that your entire team has to be cooperating with you in order to be any sort of successful.
Right.
Um,
Let me. Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No,
Oh,
no.
okay. Because like, okay, I'm just gonna talk about more just the path to pro real quick.
Sure.
Because why like orgs is not like a smart, just in Overwatch in general. I'm not talking about esports in general, just Overwatch.
Okay.
It's such a bad investment overall. Just don't do it. at least in its current state. Because
Yeah. Okay.
because we were talking about 20 like the reason why you saw more orgs in 2019 than you see in 2020 because
Mhm.
it was so profitable. If your team did so well, it didn't even matter. If you think about it, an eighth to fifth place prize now or back in 2019 was your first place prize. That's horrendous. That's horrible. I'd rather go back to a league central style where you see all these players playing out for 7 weeks consistently, where they can earn just for doing good,
Mhm.
$13,500. That's not bad, but after taxes, of course, that gets basically gone. Um, but it's better to go that way than you know you're basically rolling a dice, but your chances are from 1 to 1,000 or maybe more because you have these top level teams just coming on in. It's too difficult, man. It's so difficult.
Yeah, definitely. It's just solving an issue that um I still think about it. Just because it left me thinking. I was interviewing uh this player from SA. He was part of a team, and he was saying that I mean, like for Blizzard, it's always going to be the best thing that you can do is always have this very very well plan from the beginning. Like have your path to pro already plan how this is going to work, how the fluidity of it is going to work. Rather than have to make the changes that are happening now, which obviously they have been amazing. But I feel like if we still had the academy teams, if academy teams still felt like they're getting value out of what they're doing, then that is so much better than for players who are now trying to figure out what to do. And I heard a few casters also talking about it, how important it is always to that we have to take into account that the teams that are doing so well, like especially in A, like we saw American Tornado win. These are just a group of friends who are good at Overwatch and are good at winning, and they just insane. They're not an org. They're not really. It doesn't matter how much resources you want to put if you're an organization that are offering them a contract. They don't need it. They're just happy getting the money for themselves and getting that first place for themselves. They're also going to do really good at Gauntlet as well. And I mean, so many things that you can do by yourself, but as long as you have that already established group of people who are going to work towards it.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And you kind of feathered us into our next topic there, Dryad, which will be the gauntlet. But before we do that, I do want to make sure that we give a little bit of a shout out to those people who were able to make this podcast possible. Always got to show them a little bit of love. Vite Ramen, remember, folks, use the code Doodles, Doodles. Rhymes with noodles. Very, very convenient there to remember. If you want 10% off your order of some tasty ramen, I like it. The merch store as well, zeroissue.gg/store. Fantastic things you'll be able to get. Support the organization in general. As well, Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/number0issue. Not at all required, but just absolutely appreciated to help things like this podcast and all the extracurriculars, as I like to call them, the things go on community events, if you prefer that more literal translation. But thanks to anybody who decides to support the podcast. And now, with that being said, Dryad, I do want to kind of circle back to the gauntlet.
Yeah.
We kind of went over it last time, but if you want to just kind of refresh the people at home as to the format, things like that.
Yeah, so the way that the gauntlet is gonna work is so those top teams that we just saw in Contenders win, they already have a spot guarantee, and they're gonna team number one, so American Tornado, for example, in an A, and now Obey Alliance in EU. That was an interesting match.
Yeah.
But they're gonna have the first seed, so obviously they have the base advantage here. And then there are other things, right? So that doesn't mean that only those contender teams that we just saw have a chance, right? There is going to be a system a lot like open division, right, for teams to still have a chance if they want to join. So it's very interesting. At the end of the day, it's essentially exactly the same thing as open division, where there's a bunch of teams that are going to participate in the top. Of those four are the ones that are going to have a chance at going into Gauntlet. But that means obviously the ones that we just saw in contenders, even in trials, still have a big opportunity here. So I think the format is very interesting. I like the fact that they give the opportunity to a lot of teams that didn't make it to contenders here in November or even trials. But I think we are all expecting at the end of the day that are going to be the same teams that we already know, right? So it's not going to be like a surprise, like a random open division team just comes up on top out of nowhere. Like that's just
Yeah.
not going to
Mhm.
happen.
Definitely.
And Hans, I kind of want to pass it on to you. Are you along the same lines of thinking that we're probably going to see the same things? And if so, do you necessarily agree or disagree? Do you think that should be a little bit more restrictive to perhaps talent that hasn't been as showcased?
You know, I mean, first off, it's great that we have the gauntlet, right?
Mhm.
It's fantastic. Um, but it's also great they're having these open qualifiers, right? It gives a chance for the lower teams, at least a chance, right? It's better to not have a chance than not have a chance at all. Like to have these lower teams come up and just, give Gauntlet a shot if they can make it.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think that there's, you know, it's I don't see anything wrong with it. I overall think that, we may see the same teams, that have been in trials consistently, be, you know, back at back at the gauntlet. I honestly would not be surprised if you see, people like Hour Zero or or potentially Last Hope or, other teams, like that. Hold on, I'm trying to pull up a list if I can. Because I don't remember any teams from last month.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Uh, like Delta Phoenix, Kratos, 200 MS disbanded. They don't exist anymore.
Oh,
Quara, teams like that. I would not be surprised if they give it a shot. Or hell, there's some random owl player mixed team coming on in. I would not be surprised about that factor either.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, no, that just reminded me of so we saw that for Revival, we saw a few Overwatch League players joining and making their contenders run and they got eliminated very early on. And it was very sad, right? Just because we know they're very good players, obviously, during the Overwatch League. I mean, I'm a fan of McGravy, for example, and it was really fun, but he was saying that how he just didn't want to have for Gauntlet, he didn't want to have a he didn't want to keep being with the Revival just because he wanted at least to build a team that was at least ex Overwatch League players or people who have already been in Overwatch League. So he has the confidence because he said that the experience that those players have are experiences that no one else in contenders are going to have, of course. So that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, like you mentioned, it might be a team of 6 ex Overwatch League players that might make a run and be a highlight. But then again, anything can happen because that doesn't mean that they have the synergy going for them, and that's one of the most important things for teams, in my opinion, just having that connection with each other. No matter if you all come from kind of the same story, you have to have a lot of time to have the scrims going, have that confidence. And from what I'm looking at right now, so the teams that are already guaranteed they're going to Gauntlet for an air are going to be American Tornado, Odyssey, Susano, Noble, Drifters, Revivals, Korean One, and Uprising. There's 4 more spots remaining. And then we were talking about teams that we saw in trials, teams that we also saw in contenders. But like, I just want to say, for you, Hans, do you think it's maybe there's a team that has been doing better recently that you think has the better opportunity of making it to Gauntlet?
Oh boy. I've been watching over mainly EU.
Also for EU. That's
No,
yeah.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll say EU as well. I haven't really, highly paying attention, but as you know, Phase 2 is coming back, and of course, I'm very anticipating that they will 100% qualify. I know that their rosters, like, 5 outside the country, hell, 2 from Australia. God damn. And then, and 1 Korean too. And, and 2 guys from EU, Doggo and Doge. And of course, Lep. I have no doubt that they will be able to, qualify. I I'm s- I hell, I'm overconfident that they'll make it. But
Okay. That's fair.
um,
Uh,
besides, here's the thing: there's not really a lot of good, like not good teams, but like teams that can really, really like have a good like game like against like these former Chalice teams like Hour Zero and Last Hope and things like that, it would be very difficult for me to say if they would, actually be able to like, go up against these guys. Like I know Phase Two would have probably no problem like with any of the teams in these tournaments. Um, you know, it just really depends, like, who joins this tournament, and we'll see what happens. Actually, there is another team. What are they called? I can't remember off head, but it was the former core of Intiku who are coming back together, of course, without Denthead as their main
Monk.
DPS player. Yeah, Monka S, I know. um, with I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that team, sweep through the competition as well. They're a great group of guys. I worked with some of them before, as notably one of them, Dusk. Uh, Great kid. Um, he knows the game pretty well, and I think he's a really really solid Diva and Zarya player and Sigma player as well. Um, but uh, I mean, besides those two North American teams, there's not really anyone else notable as of right now that I really know of. Like,
Yeah.
like there's UDG, Ardor. Ardor's looking real. The people I've seen, who are coming to trial for that team are pretty interesting. It can also depend, like, what rosters are announced. Like, for example, Kratos. Like, of course they had their mid support leave early during the tournament, which was very unfortunate for them. So they were forced to basically play out the rest of it, with only 2 people on the team. But because he Kratos, there's so many things that could happen. Um,
Yeah.
there could be some teams that come in, they could stomp everybody, and then maybe there's a former Chalice team that just completely shits the bed. That could completely happen. We'll just have to wait and see. But I'm very anticipating that those 2 teams will make it to the Gauntlet no problem. Phase 2 and in the former Tiku roster.
Okay.
I'm very excited to see that prediction come to life. I'm suffering over my recent favorite team of contenders for this month, kind of getting knocked out a little bit earlier than I wanted to, but yeah, I mean, I definitely think I'll be reaching out to you and either calling you on your missed call or congratulating you on being that very adequately brained prediction there. But yeah, I mean, Gauntlet definitely something to kind of look forward to. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I often have the issue, and this more so applies to contenders in and of itself as an organization, but this kind of adds a layer on top of it where we've talked about the mobility, between open division to trials to contenders, and then back and forth between all of those 3 different positions where you would consider yourself tier 2, tier 3. Um, and for me, it seems like it has the potential, uh, based purely just on a viewer's perspective, to kind of disorient people even more. Now, I like that this is being marketed kind of as its own thing, but with being slightly tied up in the placements of contenders, I do feel like it might be a bit more confusing for those who aren't, uh, I guess, as inundated into tier 2 and 3 Overwatch. Hunts, do you think that it would do well for the health of tier 2 and 3 Overwatch to, I guess, kind of make this its own separate event, or kind of be more inclusive to contenders?
You're talking about the Gauntlet qualifiers, right?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, and no. Like, I'm trying to think how to say it. Like, sure, like, of course, tier 3 teams are going to dominate. We're not going to have
Mhm.
another Ram Ranch situation from 2-3 years ago. But you know, I don't know. I really don't know. But I I really don't know.
Okay.
Well, I really don't know.
Fair enough. If you don't know,
Yeah.
you don't know. Can't blame you on that one. But I guess we can kind of move away on that gauntlet issue and kind of go into, it's been 2 weeks since we've last been on the air, been on the tube, on the YouTube. Am I hip for saying it like that? But um a lot of things have
Yeah.
kind of progressed and developed in that time we've been away. We mentioned the streamer showdown there briefly. Obviously, we've been talking about the contenders results, but I guess first and foremost, we should go over the contenders. I guess kind of the way things have panned out, especially in this last 24 hours or so.
Okay, all right, but let's talk. Let's talk about you. Okay, hear me out. Hear me. That was insane. That was actually an insane match. Obey had such a good performance, and we saw it yesterday, right? And it
Mhm.
was like it went to 6 maps with Hurricane. But I mean, Hurricane won, so it was like okay, well, crazy, unexpected. Hurricane wins again, and then today it also went to 6 maps for the losers finals against Sugar Cult, right? Sugar
Mm.
Cult is not supposed to be a
Mhm.
top team. I mean, they're good, of course. They're up there, but it went to also 6 maps with She Cold, and then in those 24 hours. So here's like what I think. In those 24 hours, they played a total of 12 maps, unofficial matches. So I was like, yeah, they're gonna be really tired. Obey Alliance is going to be exhausted for that match with British Hurricane. There's no way, like that might affect them.
Yeah.
But then you see a 3-0 where Lethal was playing every single DPS hero, every single one. He decides to. We saw Bastion, we saw Torbjorn, we saw Symmetra, anything. McCree, that was the main thing he was playing. And they got away with that. And I was reading a few comments of like what people were thinking because you would expect kind of like this composition that they stick to towards the end, till the end at least. But they were saying like British Hurricane is very good at adapting to specific compositions. So what Obey Alliance did was surprise them because they kept switching between heroes that they never had the time to actually adapt and counter them. So that was insane. After 43 maps that British Hurricane won in contenders, they finally lose. It is the last one, probably the one that mattered the most to show how dominant they are. That was just, I mean, come on.
I tell you, it's a nail in the coffin. But let me talk about Obey real quick.
Okay.
A team who has undoubtedly have the best tank line and probably the most like in my opinion the most anticipated DPS line. I love the DPS line. Noggin Lethal, great lineup.
Mm-hmm.
I I think that undoubtedly these guys should be now. I'm not saying it's like, oh my god, it's ridiculous, but Chow and Health have constantly proven themselves
Yeah.
over like 2 contender seasons that they should be now. And they 100% proved that today. Undoubtedly. Chow is an incredible off tank. That guy can
Yeah.
play any off. Hell, he played DPS. Look at the guy. He played a couple trial seasons ago. He played Tracer and Sombra. Like, now I'm not saying he's the most flexible guy, but man, that's a player who I would want on my team. Someone who's so dedicated, someone to make out, and so has the heart to at least give it his all. And for Lethal, you have this guy who's playing on 150 and 170 MS the entire time during contenders. You know how hard that is? That's insane. And imagine playing all these different characters in the Overwatch cast. That's insane. But imagine him on low ping. Imagine. I can't imagine. But like, god damn. And like Naga, the kid has so many experience. It's like so much experience.
Yeah.
Dating all the way back from season 3 2018 with playing with goats and a few things with I remember offhand. Copenhagen Flames. That's who it is. Copenhagen. Back in season 1 2018. Like, I don't know. I feel like numerous amount of these players on on the Obey Alliance roster have 100% proven themselves that they deserve to be now. I mean, same with British Hurricane, but
Yeah.
it comes to a point where maybe our team should look at the unsigned, like hidden gem, like shiny penny, like
They proved it today, definitely.
100%, 100%.
I hope so. On the interview, Chow was also talking about how he just wanted the main thing that he wanted for his team is to have all the players. The way that he said it, which was interesting to me, was saying all the players in the team that haven't been signed yet to get signed. So that hint of the possibility that some of them already got signed, right? But hasn't been, I mean, probably announced just yet. And then he also said, like, not me, I'm too old. But come on, I mean, he was insane from beginning to end. Like watching the segment, that was the positioning that he was having. That was I was casting the game in Spanish, and I was just talking about how important it was, like the position that he was having all the time, and how good he was helping his team. How important the off tank is on the meta that we saw, and how much it really how much of a good player he is that not many people take into account. Sometimes you see more of the DPS, like, oh, he's getting kills, he's on the flank, he kills five and whatever. That's what Lethal did at some point. And I mean, it was insane, but the work that you have to put into those tanks, I definitely deserve a spot in Overwatch League. And with this state of Overwatch League, where there are so many people trying to get into it, and not that many spots, I'm just hoping they still get a big opportunity for it.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it's no secret that there's obviously a very tight amount of spots relative to how many players there are in the entirety of the world for Overwatch League. But I would definitely love to see some of those players kind of come through. Do you think I guess Hunts, from your perspective, do you think the likelihood of them being signed uh, is greater piece by piece, or kind of as a collective, or at least a chunk of the team as opposed to just one player?
Well, we'll definitely see. I mean, if an owl team is interested in them, we will see probably bits and pieces of them going away. I don't think
Mhm.
we'll see the entire roster being picked up.
Mhm.
Looking at that, the insane probability of that is just incredibly low. I don't think we'll see like maybe like I know we'll see players like Chow probably maybe get picked up. Well, it all depends on what owl teams are really looking for, and I think undoubtedly that some of these players will have no time getting picked up at all. Like I don't know why it just baffles me excuse me why oh my god why our organizations just keep constantly overlooking like talent like Obey Alliance. It's just crazy because when you take down a powerhouse like British Hurricane, players who have been together for literally a year and have a great coaching staff with Fisher, Elabon, and former Commander X, great group of guys. They should have no problem getting picked up by Obey or getting picked up by Now team. Not as an entire collective, but maybe bits and pieces going
Yeah,
to different places.
the problem would be not really like I think Overwatch like teams that are looking into recruiting players. I don't think they have any doubt into at least considering them. The problem is where would they go, right? Because we're seeing a lot of changes in Overwatch League at least that are inclining towards more of Korean rosters, and we were talking. There's a lot of conversations going on about London Spitfire going EU, but they're not gonna pick Obey, right? Realistically, but maybe like a few players, but you would expect them to pick up British Hurricane, right? So that's the problem. That's the question for Bay Alliance. If they get picked up individually, maybe one of them get picked up. Where would they even go? Especially for the off tank. There are so many off tanks that are already in Overwatch League, and for what it seems, the recruiters prefer picking up those players that have already the Overwatch League experience, rather than looking at new players. And then again, I talk about because I was watching McGravy streaming. He said that he didn't get picked up, um, and he doesn't really know what's going to happen. Right? He's Overwatch League. He's a very good player. So if that's the case for McGravy, who, yeah, even though Ella Valiant didn't perform as well, uh, everyone recognizes that he's a very good off tank. Then what are the opportunities for players and contenders to really have a good shot?
It really depends. Like, you know, it all depends on what a team is looking for. Like, hell, you look at Dallas, feel like hell, they're going all Korean at this
Yeah,
point. Like, the hell, they give up. Mix doesn't work. Hell,
yeah.
put piece together. When I look at Dallas, I feel it just looks like hell. Stick
Oh,
together, see if it works. Like it's just
Yeah.
looking like that. Like let's be honest, guys.
season one Dallas fan, yay!
Ah, and all of them are gone.
Yeah. Oh man, too
um,
You
true.
know, this is not NYX, so I think everyone's so sad about that too. God,
yeah, it's just all but Jonak.
so much pain.
Yeah, yeah,
God.
but you look at a team like NYXL, like I feel like they're kind of apparently with this alleged reports by Halo that I've been heavily paying attention to. They're think about picking up three relatively experienced, not like Owl experience, but hell, they got experience, but it just not the top level. And that's good. Like that's great. They're picking for the top talent, but but NYXL is still gonna continue that full Korean roster, and I feel like that's what our teams are shifting towards. Because think about it, we've seen more Korean players get picked up than Overwatch or than an American, a European player, or I think this is that outside of the second wind in combination with European players. Outside of that, we've seen Aztec. I don't even know who their main support is or the other support is, but Rhea, Sato, Fury, Closer, all Korean players going for these full Korean rosters. I'm not saying all these people are not educated on who's good, who's bad, but it just shows how high the playing curve is in let's say Europe or United States or America or SA in comparison to Korea.
Yeah.
Those guys, how look at the Gauntlet, right? The great example of how the comparison between American players and American teams versus Korean, and I feel like that's why you know we're starting to see a more Korean-based teams more often. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. It's very tough for pretty much anyone that's not Korean. They just
Yeah.
have to figure out. Even China. We talk about China and how really they have so many really good players. But depending on whatever's going to go, for players to get picked up, I believe there's something that uh I saw a few people talking about is that for Chinese players to be able to join, they have to sign a 3-year contract. So they can move, for example, to the United States, right? And that's already a big risk that an org has to take. Yeah, you might trust in talent, but having to sign for 3 years is very risky. So that's why Koreans, everyone from Korean players to also non-Korean players always talk about how it's a lot about the ethics and discipline that they have towards improving and how much that makes it better. But at the end of the day, there are so many also talented players from other regions, right? But that's the problem. How do you make other teams? How do you make recruiters look at pay a little bit more attention to what's going on? Because I don't think I really we're gonna see again full non-Asian roster. It's going to be at least one Korean there, two Koreans. It's gonna be more. And even when we have those mixed rosters at any level of Overwatch, there have been conflicts because even though you can learn how to say Zarya in whatever language, you can learn how to say whatever ability in whatever language. There are very specific things that sometimes you have to say, and you're not going to be able to communicate them properly, and that's always going to bring problems. And I was then the biggest fan, for example, when we saw this happening with Florida Mayhem. Um, I was a little bit hesitant. I understood that their ideas, but I was like, I mean, I do like at least a mixed roster, so you can see a little bit more variety coming through. But it does bring problems in the long run, and teams they want to win, and they need the communication to win. So how does anyone deal with that, from players to coaches to analysts? Anything is so hard to solve this issue.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons that people would side towards that Korean lineup, other than just homogenized language. But I think the biggest part that we're looking at now is definitely going to be that kind of traditionalism where it's for just based off of the results, or at least you would think based off the results, Korean's kind of the way to lean. That's how it's been. So orgs just think that there's a better, result out there. At the end of the day, I'm inclined to believe that, yes, maybe there's a higher discipline in certain areas, but people around the world will have those same capabilities. So it's probably just going to take time, and the one or two, openings that, more Western players have are really going to have to, shine in those openings if we want that kind of realization to come true, where it's, you know, NA, EU, SA players can play just as great on a team of 6 if they have, the tools to enable them, like perhaps are given to a lot of the Korean teams.
Right.
I feel like I'm trying to figure out how to spin this. It's just I understand from like an ultimate perspective,
Mhm.
right? When you're a franchise team, you want to make money and you want to win. You
Right.
can't win without having the best players. So you need to you know, go scout people that you think are amazing, right? So people will say, okay, the Koreans are good. Because I feel like from an outsider perspective, when you hear esports, you always hear the Koreans. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. That's
Right.
I think that's fantastic. It also those players to move for the opportunity. But it also leaves out, players from these other regions, like, especially SA. Australia. Well, Australia's doing, you have who was it? Cuff. Wait, was it Cuff? No, who was the person who moved up to Valiant the other day? I can't think. Anyways, there was an Australian off tank player that moved.
Yeah.
Who
I
who was
forget his
it?
name.
I'll search it up real quick. Valiant.
That was an interesting pick, but
Yeah, I I think that's
interesting.
amazing. I think if I can find it. Ah, there you go. Los Angeles Valiant. Okay, who was it? It was Adam. Okay, you gotta remember for that kid. That kid played on like 200 plus ping on NA, and no other kid can do that. And the kid was consistent top 10 in North America. Who else can do that? Like I it kind of set the standard. Like for other players that you know were players in in AU that if Adam can do it, we can too.
Mhm.
But also the playing curve in Australia is significantly lower than a team in North America or in Europe. Because when you have a high playing curve, like let's say in China or Korea, it's significantly different because you have teams who know the meta better. They players who are smarter and just overall just better. And going back to the OWL conversation that we were talking about, that's why these organizations want to look into more Asian teams because not saying that's cheaper, but they're just better. And I'm not saying NA needs to wake up, but if there was a way for North America or Europe to like catch up the speed with these better teams, then you'll see more and more. Maybe you'll see more and more teams looking more in North America and other regions as well. It's just all about the playing curve, and if you're at the top of the playing curve, like in Korea or Asia, you're just gonna not necessarily dominate at all, but it's just easier.
A little bit more valuable. Is that kind of
It's
the
more valuable, yeah,
Okay.
100%,
So
100% more valuable.
we're getting close to being out of time here, Hunts, but I do
Mhm.
want to put you on the spot. You might hate me for this, and if so, I'm sorry.
Go
If
for
you're
it.
an NA or an EU player, how do you increase your value in comparison when your region, I was gonna say your country, but in EU, your region, not have that high player curve? How do you
Okay.
kind of make yourself stand out or increase it for your region even?
Just I'll talk about individual first, and then we'll get to region.
Okay.
Individually, always, always, always market yourself. Post clips. Post, you know, updates. Not necessarily updates you like, but like like hey, I did this today, or like be active on social media. Post
Rank
funny stuff.
1. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Like being rank one. That's hell. That's an accomplishment, dude.
True, true.
Like like organize your your social media is the face of you, right? You want anything bad, you want all the good things, make it look nice. Like let's say like looking for team owl or like for team in owl or
Mhm.
things like that. But just showing off like what kind of player you can be is all you need to do, and let that translate into officials, and then more and more teams start noticing because the more you see, it's all about you know your appearance online, if that makes sense. And like,
Yeah.
I bet you all have heard online, like, oh, like safety and stuff. But it's all about how you appear as a person. Because like, if you think about like this Overwatch entirety as a scene, if you do one thing bad, it gets to spread around like the quickest wildfire, like ever.
Right.
Um, regionally, like it's all part of the individual stuff. Like it's all which is all what your staff on your team can do as well. Promoting your team, making content around you, like things like that. Like just the small things can make such a big impact. Like for example, like a team like Susano, that team has killer brand. I love that team's branding, and I
Really good.
hell, I applaud you for doing the right thing. But if they take a step further and like have player interviews, player biographies, all these things about players, like, all about their players, just showcasing them off, you'll see. Like, yeah, I'm not saying you will see a lot more, but you'll see a lot more impact and perspective on you as a person. And our teams want to see that. Obviously, our teams, also care about mechanics and make sure
Mhm.
the teams and players have to have those as well. And I believe that's what matters. Because if you
Okay.
don't have that, then you're just, like let me make an example. Like, maybe you're a caster, not absolutely crazy mechanical skill, but doesn't post much on social media. That's okay. But as long as you you know, you show yourself off in some way or fashion, like, hey, like check out this cool clip I have in comp, or like this funny moment in comp that gains followers and that allows you to it gets the word out about you.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, look, I don't know, Dynasty, like this crazy kid from Revival, absolute utter kid, and everyone thinks he's I think of him as a good player every time I see his clips. Like I'm not sure if you guys ever seen see a clip of a player like, damn, he's so freaking good. And damn, I'm gonna be surprised if this kid was ranked one. Like that's what I want to see. Like in my opinion, when I'm looking at talent,
Okay.
like not above all things, but that's one thing I like to see.
Right.
Obviously, I'm not an owl scout, but I want to see how you are as a person and
Fair enough.
things like that.
And now on to I guess the second half, the regional
Regional,
part of that question.
it's all about team perspective.
Mhm.
Blizzard can do more. You know, it's all about Blizzard. They need to entice people, not only to invest, but bring back players into the path to pro. Because more money entices more playtime. That entices a lot. Not necessarily more teams to come back, but allows more of a chance to people to look at you. And also, like the reintroduction of academy teams needs to happen because those academy teams are directly affiliated with the Overwatch League team, and it's just kind of a strain. Your end goal is to graduate from the academy team.
Yeah.
You want to graduate into that out position on, maybe it doesn't have to be that team you graduate. Let's say you're from Gladiators Legion. You're going to Gladiators, like that's graduating, but you also go to a different team, but it's also very difficult for you to understand the skill ceiling of Overwatch League because let's say your team like Odyssey, number one in contenders, but it's very difficult to get scrims. I don't know their situation. Obviously, I'm just saying this.
Mhm.
Um, to get scrims, if they don't have that high level of a scrim, you're gonna have a lackluster of a time to for the players to understand what the meta is and to get to that level.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, I think that's what it's mostly on Blizzard for regional.
Okay.
Um, in order, they need to improve the team, entice Overwatch teams to bring back their academy teams. That needs to happen
Okay.
overall.
Well, hopefully we see a little bit of that if you're a fan of that diversity, which I like to consider myself a little bit more fond of it. But I think we're getting close towards the end here. So Hans, before we let you go, I do want to give you the opportunity to I guess give any shout outs, tell the people where they can catch you, whatever you like.
Yeah, sure. Follow me on Twitter at qhunts_w. I'm also looking for team as general manager and or team manager. Um, DMs open on Discord as well at Hunts hashtag 8107. You know,
Yep.
yeah.
All right. Well,
Oh,
hit our boy Hunts up. Get get him
absolutely.
some
DMs
work.
open.
Well, once again, Hunts, we appreciate you coming down
Of
here and
course.
kind
Thank
of
you so much for having me on.
giving
I
your
love it.
perspective. It's been a ball, at least for myself.
Yeah.
But that is going to be the conclusion of our Zero Issue podcast here for today. For myself, I am Sir Waltham. You can catch me on Twitter at Sir Waltham.
Yep. And you can find me as Dan Dryad.
All right, simple enough.
Yep. There
but-
it is.
But with that, folks, thank you guys for tuning in. Once again, thanks to our sponsors, Vite Ramen, for coming in. Don't forget to check out the merch store or the Patreon if you feel like supporting this podcast or just Zero Issue in general. But until next time, folks, we hope to see you then. But stay safe and take care, everybody.